Hello YouTubers, Joe Kersey here on Wednesday, February 19th, 2014, and allowing for some parallax there, we're going to call it 40 degrees here, and the big melt is on. There's a little cascade of drips here that I had to avoid when I stepped outside here with the camera. I did take the precaution of covering it with my cap, however. Can't really tell there's much melt going on here by looking down here at our various creek bank. Of course, a lot of the skim ice has left the center line of the creek, so we've had a couple of sizable herds of ducks come swimming up and back and forth down there earlier today. It's well, there's a hawk just nailed something. It's always life and death up here on Elm Creek. I spent this morning researching, well, researching's too strong a term. Looking up these external hard drives, both either the spinning disk hard drive or the solid state hard drives, that you plug into either a USB port or a Thunderbolt port to, well, you know, make your hard drive capacity bigger on your computer. And because, as I've remarked before, mine's getting filled up, and I think and what I've done is I've bought two additional spinning disk hard drives from G Technology, identical to the one I already have that I use for my Time Machine backups on my Apple MacBook Pro Retina. And I think what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to just transfer all these movie files, these YouTube videos and things that I've made. I can transfer them out of my internal hard drive, which is the solid state hard drive, transfer them out onto this external thing, and then that'll free up about 400 gigabytes. You know, then I can start over again, you know, and then I can use the other one for Time Machine backups when I finally, you know, fill up the first Time Machine backup thing. So that's about 220 bucks for the two of them with shipping. So I think maybe I've solved that problem. If not, well, then I've got two hard drives, external hard drives. So it's you know, it was so nice today. I thought, well, hell, I'm just going to wear my shorts today, and I did until I thought, wait a minute, it's not that warm. So I put my long pants on. Of course, I've been doing a little YouTube stuff, catching up on some stuff, and Paul had yesterday off. He had to work Monday. He worked Monday, and but he had yesterday off. Then he's back to work today. He might have Friday off. So we shall see on that. But for now, it's a pretty day. It's a little windy out. You probably can hear it a little bit. You get out, you know, out of the shoulder of the house. it whooshes around a little bit on you. So we had a little bit of almost an ice dam effect down at the end of the driveway earlier today, but that seems to have melted now and is starting to spill over each side of the ruts. Okay, I've got some more things to say to you inside here, but we'll leave you with a view of paradise here today. Haven't seen any of the deer yet. A lot of squirrels out. Yay, I like squirrels. Well, we're back inside now, and I have a feeling that you're going to notice that things are considerably quieter than having all that background noise of all the heaters and things, because I've actually got all the heaters off. All the heaters are off right now. I thought I'd give you all a break. That opening shot is of a book called Owning the Earth by a fellow named Andrew Linklater. Now he just recently died. He died just a few weeks after he finished this book. And this book came out here late last year. And it got very good reviews. Its subtitle is Owning the Earth, well, subtitle is Owning the Earth, The Transforming History of Land Ownership. It's published by Bloomsbury. Well, I'm normally not influenced by reviews, but since this guy was an actual historian as opposed to a journalist trying to, pad out his resume, as so many of these popularized histories are nowadays, I thought, well, this is a serious book, so I got it. Well, I got it because it's a serious book, but primarily, I mean, there are a lot of serious books I don't buy, but I bought it because I've always been fascinated by this topic of land ownership and surveying and the general effect of property ownership, various forms of property ownership are in terms of how societies are organized and value systems and how that reflects value systems and so forth. So this book was just right up my alley. And, it's one of those things that are part of your worldview. And as you recall about in my discussion when I was discussing N.T. Wright's definition of worldview, the things that you think about without even thinking about them. I mean, you don't even think about them because you just carry them around with you. And here in the United States and in many parts of the Western world, the idea that you own a piece of ground or you own a house on a piece of ground and so forth it's so ingrained as you don't even think about it. I mean, you either own a piece of ground or you don't. And in general, aside from out west where the federal government owns about 2/3 of the land, certainly east of the Mississippi, there's some tracts of state-owned land, but most are owned by private individuals, or corporations, private individuals. And in the east of the Mississippi, the federal government has not maintained ownership of large tracts of land. Now, in the Northwest Territory, the old Northwest Territory, the federal government sold the land, but they sold basically all the land. I mean, there are a couple of national forest parcels, but those aren't even owned by the federal government. Those are just called national forests. Now, in Michigan, there's a fair amount of state-owned land up north, but that's owned by the state. That's not owned by the federal government. unlike out west. Well, I got a bit far afield, but so what got me interested in this was when I was interested in a formal basis. Was when I was junior and senior in high school, I worked for these lawyers, these two lawyers in town, and sort of a bread and butter segment of their practice. They did a little bit of everything. They did some criminal work and civil work, but sort of one of their sort of ongoing sort of maintenance sources of income was they did real estate titles and handled mortgage closings for a couple of financial institutions in town. And that required them to do real estate title checks. And they taught me how to do real estate title checks up the courthouse. And that involved checking on the taxes and going back and checking the legal descriptions and comparing it against, what was being offered for sale. And so I got to spend a tremendous amount of time in the recorder's office reading these old deeds because we'd trace it back. Well, I don't know what the standard is now, but the standard then was you had to go back at least 50 years. Quite often, by the time you got back to where you were going to cross that 50-year threshold, you'd be back in the early 1800s at the original deeds out of the federal land grants. I, James Madison, President of the United States, do hereby grant, sell, title, and convey to so-and-so and their heirs and assigns forever the following piece of ground or parcel, described as following to wit, and in the lands that were formerly surveyed in either the 6 township system or the 5 township system, they're very precise. So many distances to this, and then so many, at a certain angle and to the compass reference. But out of the Virginia military survey lands in southern Ohio, south central Ohio, down, from the river up to, maybe 30 miles south of Columbus. A lot of these descriptions were, go north about so many rods to a big tree or a big rock, and so you have very different, and those pieces of ground are far more irregularly shaped than the rectangular, square sections, quarter sections, half quarter section parcels that are described in the Congress lands or the Sims Purchase And in fact, the place I grew up on, the front 45 acres were just north of the Sims Purchase there, and then the south 30 acres were part of the original Sims Purchase that extended up, that included Cincinnati. And it's fun to go back and read all that stuff, and so I got interested in that, and the old adage was all land is held of the king. Because when the Normans came over and conquered England, essentially William the Conqueror took over all the land. That's it. He owns all the land. And if you were going to get any rights in land, you had to curry favor with the king. You had to get it as, it was granted to you as one of his barons or somebody who had fought for him, and then that's how then they had this huge break in their land tenure system in 1066, and of course to consolidate that, then they created Domesday Book, which I've got a copy of Domesday Book right here, which is very fascinating to look through. Of course, there are measurements of land acreage and so forth. They don't use acres. They use all sorts of odd names that we have really no equivalents for today. Well, we have some, we can figure them out, but you know, they listed all the cattle and all the buildings, and so they could tax them. You know, of course, so they can tax you. So this is where I developed an intense interest in this sort of thing, and if you go back and read Blackstone's commentary on the English common law, and then you can sort of wade through the legal Latin French, sort of, you know, Norman French and Latin terms. There's a whole gradation of land tenure. Well, certainly that exists over and still exists to some extent in Great Britain today. That never really took hold over here. Over here in what became the United States, you basically have two forms of land tenure. You've got fee simple, which means you own it flat out. You own it, period. You own it. Now you can mortgage it, but in theory you still own it until, for whatever reason, it gets taken from you if you can't pay the mortgage or don't pay your taxes or whatever. That's called fee simple tenure, land tenure. And then, or you lease. You lease something. You lease like an apartment, or you lease a piece of ground, and generally in the United States, those are, well, you can have a long-term lease, but it's generally it's a year-to-year arrangement, and the person who is the leaseholder, let's see, I can never know it's lessee or lessor, but the person who rents the ground generally cannot assign that lease to a subsequent party. You know, you can't sell it on. Whereas in Great Britain, you have freeholds and you have leaseholds. And the freehold, you know, is like fee simple here in the United States. But the leaseholds are generally, they're, you know, since a lot of land is still held by aristocracy that got these original land grants from, you know, during the conquest, and, you know, subsequently from various services they may have rendered to a particular monarch. You know, you typically you buy a lease when the lease runs out, and typically these are 99-year leases. Then that can be sold anew to somebody, either to the current person who's there, or somebody comes in and buys it. But once you own, say you go out and you buy one of these 99-year-old leaseholds, say you live there for 30 years, then you can sell the subsequent 63 years of that, or 30 years, 39 years of that leasehold, or 69 years of that leasehold to somebody else. In other words, it's like you own it, you can sell it. But they can only buy it for then 69 years. See? And then, so the person who rents out the ground, you know, they get all their money up front, one big whack, and then they don't get any income off that ground the rest of the time. So it's an interesting system. But what really also then kind of cemented me into this thing was when I was a freshman in college, taking History 121, which in theory covered from like medieval up to, well, 19th century, I guess. Which means that you don't cover much of it all, but we had to write a paper. And I got thinking about, well, the English common law, you know, because I had just gotten done working for these guys. I'd heard a lot about the common law. And so, you know, you go in, you go to the library, do some reading, and as near as I could figure out, now obviously this was a very naive first pass attempt, you know. It occurred to me that a lot of the English common law, even in matters completely unrelated to land, developed from lawsuits involving various forms of tenure of land. You know, tenure meaning how you hold land, or how you alienate land from yourself if you own it already, or own it in some form already. How you can alienate that land from yourself or from your estate. And so my thesis was that a lot of the writs developed, you know, subsequent civil writs, not necessarily criminal writs, developed from how they were working out these new forms of land tenure that occurred after this sudden break in 1066. It's an interesting thought experiment. So that's why I bought Owning the Earth. So I started it last night. Looks like N.T. Wright's going to be on hold for a while. But that's okay. I'll get back to him. You know, St. Paul's been around for almost 2,000 years. I'm sure he'll sit quietly there for about another 5 or 6 or 8 weeks here while I do some other stuff. So that's about it. It's my ex-wife's birthday. She's 78. So happy birthday, Faith. I sent her a bunch of photographs I took up here when Thomas and Kelly and Carter and D-Dog came up. So I think I sent her 12 or 13, 12. I think I sent her 12 pictures. So, well, she'll either like them or she'll say I'm full of beans. Who knows? Guess we'll find out. Alrighty, it's a great day here, and it's nice and clear and windy and sunny and melting, and that's good. So, bye-bye, YouTubers.